All right, welcome back to the NaturoAcademy podcast.
I'm your co-host, Marissa.
And I'm Dr. Andrew.
And today we'll be talking about how to live till you're 100 years old.
Yes, how to become a centenarian.
What is a centenarian?
That's someone who lives to 100.
Ah.
Pretty straightforward. And then there's super centenarians, which I believe live past 110. Is that correct? To your
I thought it
knowledge?
was 120, but 110.
I don't know. There aren't a lot of people living past 120. Maybe 110 or 115. That's what I think.
We'll have to Google that one.
Anyways, becoming a centenarian is a personal goal of ours and many of our patients as well. And I think it's not just about the number. A lot of people say I'd want to live to 100, but most of us probably don't want to live to that number if they're like in extreme chronic pain or have no mobility, right? We want to live into our hundreds, but also have a good quality of life at the same time.
And this is a conversation that we like to start with our patients. And recently we've started a new club called the Centenarian Club. We want to start this conversation when we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Like, we want to start it as soon as we can, because the topic here is about longevity, right? It's about living your best life. It is about reaching 100 years old as well, but it's about living an optimal, full, fulfilled, joyful, healthful life from now until then as well, which is ultimately the goal.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people just don't think that far ahead, but they also have these limiting beliefs that they can't live that long, or, it's just in our genes or whatever, that we're only going to live till 80 and die of these chronic diseases. But I believe that's not really how we're designed. And I've seen some research, I don't know how valid this is, but that our optimal lifespan is actually close to 120. If you do all the right things, we should be living, closer to that age. Whereas honestly, not many people at all are living until that now. So I think it's just very doable. And, we need to change our mindset into believing that we can live a long, healthy life.
Absolutely. Mindset is so important. And as Andrew said, quote unquote, doing the right things. Now, there are things that we know to be true to be able to live a long, healthy life. And we're going to talk about some of those things. This is not an all-inclusive list. This is why actually we started what's called the Centenarian Club, which we'll tell you about later, because it's ongoing, right? It's ongoing things to implement. It's ongoing perspective shifts that you need to make. It's ongoing connections with your community members and living joyfully and choosing different actions in your life. It's not such a, okay, do these 5 things and then you're going to make it, right? It's ongoing. It's complex. There's lots of different variables, and it's going to change based on the person as well.
Totally. And we, like Marissa said, we're not going to be able to cover all this stuff and won't even be able to go into great detail in any of these sections, but we're going to talk about some of the more important things that we think are valuable, and also that have just been a little bit more popular with the recent documentaries about the blue zones and all this talk about longevity. So we're going to hit on a few key things that we think are important, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, why don't you take us off? Okay,
so let's start with diet. I think we all agree that your nutrition is very important. It's very interesting looking at, so if you guys may be familiar with the blue zones, so that's Dan Buettner. This guy essentially traveled around the world and studied these different cultures who have a high proportion of centenarians or super centenarians. And he's trying to study, okay, what are the things that, cause longevity? And there's a lot of debate. We still have a ton of, debate over what is the best diet to follow for longevity. He kind of came to the conclusion that it was a plant-based diet. I think that can be very helpful for some people, but not necessarily for everyone. I think it's totally individualized. But I would say there's a few common themes that you see amongst all those areas of people who live a long time. So one of the common things is super high quality food. So we can start with that. Most of the food they're preparing themselves in some manner, right? They're growing their own food, they're hunting or butchering their own animals. It's very much high quality food, and they know where it comes from, essentially.
Yeah. A lot of people talk to us and they're like, okay, which diet should I follow? And it's more complex than that, right? There's no one diet that's like, yes, this one is it. You really do have to look at your genetic heritage, what your ancestors were eating, what's available in your local environment, right? Because if we're constantly eating foods that are shipped from so far away, or foods that are genetically modified to be able to grow in this climate, even it's not conducive to optimal nutrition for your body specifically. Now, there are a lot of people who do, let's say, a plant-based diet, or on the total opposite is the carnivore diet. And once they do it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the answer, right? And they kind of shout it out from the rooftops. And a lot of these people, not all of them, but a lot of these people down the road realize, okay, this was it. That was it for that time of my life, right? Or maybe where I was in the world or whatever. And then they get to a point where they're like, that was, maybe it was more of a cleanse or just a period of time that my body really benefited from that diet. And now I'm moving on to this one. So it just kind of, exclaims the point that there's not one diet, but you do ultimately want to be eating whole foods that are rich in nutrition and nutrients for our body. The foods that are innately found in nature and not processed to become a food.
Yeah, definitely. So for sure, it's all whole foods. What were we going to say?
I was going to say it mostly, right? We want to look at these things and it's not, even exclusive. Like you still live and we still live in a society that carries these types of foods. But when our diet is primarily made up of those foods, it increases our own resilience to the junk as well.
Yeah, definitely. So for sure, quality food, minimally processed. I guess we can talk a little bit now about, which I also think is important, is preparation or maybe some degree of processing, but not in the standard sense that we think of. So, all of these cultures, they're essentially growing their own food or hunting it, whatever, like they're very connected to it. But then also I think when they're processing it, they go through great lengths to make sure that the food has like the most optimal nutrition, right? So a lot of us, if you think about like cooking oats, for example, quick oats, right? You just like, put them in some water, boil them, and that's it. Whereas traditionally, if you were to harvest a grain like that, they would actually go through like quite a bit of you could call it processing, where they're, soaking these grains overnight or doing some sort of fermentation, making like a sourdough bread, right? So they're spending a lot of time actually preparing the food after it's harvested and doing, many things that we would consider to be inconvenient to absolutely maximize the nutrition of that food. I think that's an important key, and a lot of those techniques are, kind of making a comeback would have largely been lost because we just like the quick, convenient stuff that we can get right away. But especially things like beans, like you see a lot of those consumed by these blue zones, but they like soak them for a really long time. They slow cook them forever. They're not buying like canned beans, right? So it's totally different preparation. And you could even call that, right, like I said, some degree of processing, but it's, processing foods in the right way to make them super nutritious for our bodies.
Yeah. So beans and legumes, generally speaking, soaking them.
Yeah.
Even nuts as well.
Yeah, a lot of nuts and seeds.
Yeah. Grains, those can be soaked and fermented and sprouted.
Yeah.
And again, this is something that you can do, or a lot of companies now are onto this and offering that as, a solution. Like for instance, there is a company, I don't remember the company name, but Costco Canada carries a sprouted oats.
Yeah, 1 degree.
It's 1 degree.
Yellow bag.
Yeah. Sprouted oats, right? So there's an option for you, and those are organic as well. So grains, beans, nuts, vegetables, those can be fermented.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So there's those types of preparation processes can really help with optimal digestion for these foods.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot more to that, even like dairy products and making cheeses and yogurts and all that kind of stuff, various forms of fermentation. We won't go too deep into that, but the point is they're spending a lot of focus on the preparation of their foods, and they're very present with the whole process. I think that general connection to their food from, growing it from scratch or harvesting it and then processing it, and then which would kind of get into my third point that I think is important, is them eating in a community and socially. So I think there's a big difference between like the way we often eat food and just like maybe by yourself watching Netflix, like totally detached from what you're eating, versus in those communities, they would often be, gathering for these big celebrations or just eating as a family. Like food is such a social thing. And I'm sure they're, much more grateful for their food than we often are, right? So I, catch myself consuming a whole meal and not even like, just is gone. Like I don't even remember what happened, right? Whereas I'm sure when you're, cooking that food from scratch and, doing not just cooking, but like harvesting it from scratch, cooking it, putting all that effort into the processing, then you're enjoying it with family and being, super grateful. So I think all those things, independent of what they're eating, makes a huge impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if anyone spent a season gardening, the effort that goes into producing food and harvesting food. It's not a very straightforward process. You don't just plant a seed and a few weeks later get a carrot. There's seeding, there's weeding, there's making sure that the soil is fertile, there's making sure that it's even growing in a good capacity. There's so much, the sun, the watering, there's so much that goes into it. And I think that appreciation for the food that you're able to express and actually be present with the food and eat it in communion with others. There's a lot of cultures that actually set a table or set a place at the table in hopes of somebody coming by, in hopes of sharing this meal with somebody else. I think it's so beautiful because that really just speaks to the importance of sharing food, and that can be very ceremonial for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
And not being
totally.
distracted while you eat.
For sure.
So nutrition, that's what we just went over. And I think that is, that's the first thing that we go over, and it is extremely important. But we're going to be talking about a few points today, and they're all important, right? It's not, we can't always put our effort all into one thing. So let's move on to the next one that we have written down here, which is nature connection.
Yeah. So going back to the food, for example, I think that's like a huge part of nature connection too, having a connection to where your food comes from. So they're spending so much time outdoors. That's just their lifestyle, right? I mean, they have...
Who are you saying they?
Sorry, I'm talking about like centenarians that have been studied. So I shouldn't just limit myself to those centenarians because those aren't, the only people. But when these centenarian populations are studied, they're spending a tremendous amount of time outdoors. And even hunter-gatherers, they don't have the same lifespan necessarily, but they do have quite a long health span. So many of the current hunter-gatherer tribes, when they're studied now, they live like well into their 70s, 80s, like similar lifespans, but they don't have any of the chronic diseases that we do. Like they're up and at it, and some of them even hunting until the day they die, right? So, and one of the commonalities between all those people who are living a long time, a long healthy life, is that they're spending so much time outdoors where we're designed to be, right? So doing all the food related stuff, whether it's gardening, foraging, hunting, etc. Just exercise, being social, enjoying the weather. I will say most of those blue zones are in warmer climates. I don't know if there's any in like super cold areas. So it can definitely be more of a challenge in a place like Canada in the winter.
Well, that brings us to point number 3, is moving out of Canada.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But generally, I think just spending more time outside and having that connection to nature is super important.
Yeah. And we are beings of nature. I think we live often that we live like we're not. We have these, concrete boxes that we live in to separate ourselves from the, the spiders and the soil and the sun and all the things that are outside. But we actually are beings of nature. So the more time we can spend outside, taking meetings outside, a lot of us still need to work during the day. So if you can take your meeting outside barefoot on the grass, you're connecting to nature, even though you're still on technology and in a meeting and in that world. Taking walks, if you can't actually take your meetings outside, spending your breaks outside, taking walks instead of catching up on emails. We get so caught up. I heard something recently, and he was saying like the people, if you interview the people who are on their last, who know that they're dying, they have a certain, prognosis for how long they're going to live. All these things that we fill our time with, they said, the quote was that it just becomes noise. Right? It's like, this isn't actually important. It's so much easier to put the computer away for 5 minutes and step outside when you know that there's like a expiration date, I guess. And I think that we can all live from that perspective, and not to say that there is it's imminent for us or not, but with the perspective shift of, I actually want to live a healthful life for a very long time. And I want to enjoy every single second of it along the way. It's not just about reaching that 100 years old. Enjoying every single second. So allowing those 5-minute breaks that you have during the day, 10-minute, hour lunch breaks, whatever it is, go outside, connect with nature, put your hand on the earth, put your feet on the earth, breathe in the air that is in outside. It's so important for us to connect in that way.
Yeah, and I think there's just so many benefits, we can't even quantify all of them, but like the sun, we've talked about it before, extremely important to be getting that sunlight. It goes way beyond vitamin D. Like our bodies are literally charged from that solar energy. Standing on the earth barefoot, grounding, breathing the fresh air, even just hearing the sounds is soothing to your nervous system, like natural sounds, right? There's so many different benefits just from being outside. Yeah. So whenever you can, if it's just going out to like eat a meal there instead of in your kitchen, like Marissa said, going for a walk, just like sunbathing, like how many people legitimately like spend time in their day doing absolutely nothing, just going outside and just like lying down in the sun or just sitting down by a river, whatever it is. So sprinkle it in. Obviously, most of us aren't living that lifestyle where we're like homesteading or being hunter-gatherers where we're spending all day outside. But even just sprinkling in small amounts here and there can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. And just looking at your environment too, I think it was Zach Bush who said that the best way to get to know your environment is to be in the best way to get to know nature is to be in the same environment day after day and take it all in. And after I heard that, do you remember that quote? Was that Zach Bush?
Yeah, no. It was Tim Corcoran or something.
You have such a good memory. Oh my God. Okay. Well, after I heard that, I'm always dying to go for a hike here, hike there, and I still do. We still, explore. But I really started to take in our own backyard and get to know, what the seasons do to our grass and the dandelions and the bugs. We live near a lake here, so what the season, what time of year the swans come. Before I thought it was kind of random, but now I understand exactly when they're going to come. What is the migrational path of the cormorants, things like that. You start to understand your own environment, and you get so much more in tune with nature just by looking in your own backyard. We're fortunate to have a lake here, so it's amazing. But even if you just have a little patch in the backyard, something to get in tune with, that's still so important, and you get to learn so much about nature and be more connected that way as well.
Yeah, totally. Okay, should we move on to the next one?
Okay, so number 3 is movement. This is another one that seems pretty intuitive. I think a lot of people, when it comes to health, a lot of people always want to know about diet and movement, right? And that
I would say diet and exercise.
Exercise, yes. We'll change it to nutrition and movement because movement itself is moving your body in a way that serves you. And this can be intuitive based on the day. This can be going to the gym and getting in like a quote unquote exercise regimen in. Or it can be moving your body. It could be dancing. It could be vacuuming. It could be gardening. It could be going for a walk. Movement, getting your blood flowing and your lymphatic system moving is vital for longevity.
Yeah. Yeah, so many benefits. And I think too, one of the interesting things about the blue zone specifically is that none of them are really doing they're not going to a gym, and they don't have regimented exercise plans. I'm not saying that those are bad, but it's just inherent in their lifestyle. They're constantly moving. And yeah, they're going to take their breaks and sit. And, even hunter-gatherers too, they've shown that they can be quite sedentary at times, but they're also balancing that with just plenty of consistent movement. And that's how our bodies are designed. It craves that type of movement for the reasons you mentioned, to drain the lymphatic system, to improve circulation, the fascia to, distribute electrical energy across that. There's so many different benefits. And I feel like it's important to figure out what works for you and what you enjoy doing, right? If you hate running, then, don't run. If you want to weightlift or play sports or dance, any of those things are all great. Cycling. So figure out what you enjoy doing. Ideally stuff that you can do outside as well. So you can kind of stack those benefits. But yeah, there's so many different things you can do. The point is just make sure that you're moving.
Yeah. And we're not meant to be sitting all day either. So even if you do have to sit, based on the nature of your job, you can even move in the way that you sit. You can bring in an exercise ball and sit on an exercise ball and try and stay still on an exercise ball. It's not easy, right? We're constantly moving and adjusting. You can change from an office chair to, more of a stool. You can sit on the floor, bring your computer down to the floor. Moving in looking at your own lifestyle, or looking at the way that you currently have to operate in a day, bringing in as much physical movement as possible, moving your body around. But then if you are sitting, you can actually still bring movement in while you sit.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Okay, is that good for movement?
I think so. I think just to summarize, move in the way that feels good to you. It can be exercise, and I think resistance training itself is so important. Even in the people who live closely to the earth, they're often lifting rocks, and maybe they're not going to the gym, but they are lifting things, right? We need to get our muscles involved. We need to get our muscles strengthening, and it improves our own resilience. So I think strength training is important. So whether that's at the gym or not, you can use body weight, or you can just get involved in your own environment. Like I said, gardening and things that can be strength training as well, depending on your physical capacities.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You just want to challenge your muscles
Yeah.
in some capacity. When we think of strength training, we're often thinking of going to the gym and lifting some sort of weight. It doesn't have to be like that. It's anything that is going to challenge you. And especially as you age, you lose a lot of that muscle mass. But a lot of the research shows too that having good cardiorespiratory fitness, like a high VO2 max, is also correlated with longevity, right?
Yeah.
So focusing on all aspects of fitness, ideally, also getting your cardio up. If that can just be walking at a fast pace, it could be some jogging, could be intermittent sprinting. All of those things are excellent, and you can achieve that. I love playing sports. I still do work out here and there, but I would much rather play a sport because I love it, and you get to incorporate all those different things. So I think that's the key to sustainable fitness, is finding what you love to do. Try to balance out, the different types of things you need to work on. So mobility is also very important. You got your cardiovascular fitness, strength training, all those things. So try to be well-rounded, and you don't don't feel the need to have to like push yourself a crazy amount. You just want to be doing things that are constantly giving you a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. And have discipline. Make sure you bring movement in every single day, but have the flexibility to know that that doesn't have to look the same every day. And you don't need to be going to the gym every day or things
Right.
like that. Move intuitively. Push yourself in the way of discipline, but not to the point where you're, like Andrew said, you don't have to be doing that every single day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the next one we have on our list here is social connection. I think this one is often forgotten or kind of undervalued. And it's actually like number one importance, I think, for a lot of the Blue Zones or a lot of the centenarian people that they interview. That could be people's, number one thing. How do I say this? Like, they attribute it to social connection, community. Right. And for us in Canada, at least, I think it's very undervalued. And in fact, it's so undervalued that it's like, we'd rather be productive. We'd rather be doing all these things, making wealth, getting material goods, and way over and putting high value on that over social connection.
Right. Yeah, this is potentially the most challenging one actually out of all of them, even though it can be very simple. Like, it's not that hard to modify your diet or to move more, right? But to create like genuine social connection is difficult. So, I think a lot of these things in general, the centenarians don't really have to think about because it's already ingrained into their lifestyle. So we just need to find ways to try to do the same. So it's not always an uphill battle to implement these things, right? Mm-hmm. But it can be as simple as scheduling, a hangout or a phone call with a friend, like once a week type of thing, right? Everyone enjoys doing that, but it's not something that you typically, or that many people typically schedule in. Whereas you do that in a heartbeat for some sort of business meeting, right? So just, I think, setting aside the intentional time to do that stuff, or even just connecting with your family, say like, hey, this day we do this, right? We're just going to put our phones away, put our screens away, not work, and have some sort of social connection, doing whatever you enjoy doing, right? And that also ties into like diet, for example, eating socially, having set meal times where you enjoy that with other people, right? Inviting your neighbors over for dinner or having a weekly dinner with your friends across the street, whatever it is, right? So I think just having some intentional space to do that is really important. And I think social media and the internet is great for some things, but it's not really genuine connection. It's not the same. So we need to find ways to balance that out with like true connection.
Mm-hmm. And you can really habit stack on some of the other things that we were saying, like Andrew mentioned, enjoying a meal with loved ones or with a friend, even with colleagues. That can still be social connection as well.
Exercising with in a group. Yeah,
exercising, scheduling walks, or having a phone call with somebody. We like to use. It always makes me cringe when people actually have their phone to their head while they're walking, because of just the EMFs and whatnot. But you can use like a wired headset and have a phone call with a friend while you go for a walk, while the two of you guys walk. It's like you're walking together if you can't physically be together.
Yeah.
So that's, and spending time outside, being in nature, it kind of triple whammies that one. So yeah, I think it's important to incorporate. I think it is a lost art, and especially with social media, sometimes we can feel like we're being social, and there can be some very genuine interactions online. But a lot of people consume social media instead of engage in social media. A lot of people are scrolling and catching up with people's lives, and maybe even leaving a comment, but it's not so much of an interaction as it is a consumption. So challenge yourself on that if that seems to be your biggest connection to the social world is social media. See who you can reach out to, see who you can connect to. Start with, if you have a partner, start there. That's easy. Go on a date night. When was the last time you guys had a date night, the two of you with no phones, no computers, no technology? With your family, your kids, your parents, your siblings, friends, whoever you can connect to, that when we're saying this, who comes to mind first? Start there.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, and then the last thing here is...
And again, this isn't an all-encompassing list, but last thing that we want to talk about today, I guess,
is a low-stress lifestyle. So again, actually, this one might be the hardest one in the Western world for people to implement. But stress is like the silent killer, right? So many of our health ailments are directly or indirectly caused by stress in some capacity. And I think it's just difficult with our fast pace of life and I mean, to be honest, it's not really easy to live in a lot of these places without like a good income, for example. So you kind of need to work hard and sometimes be stressed financially, or whatever it is. There's so many different things that can cause our stress. So finding ways that we can reduce that in the first place is very helpful. But also just activities that can empty your stress bucket. I don't think it's realistic to say, yeah, like just live this zero stress life. That's not going to happen, right? And you're going to go through different periods of life when things are more stressful. But I think having the tools to empty that stress bucket, to offset the stress, are extremely important. But also just evaluating your life. Like, I don't know how often people sit down and say, okay, what are my main sources of stress and what can I do about it? There may be some instances you can't do much or anything at all, but most of the time it is modifiable. Maybe not immediately, but you could say like, hey, I really don't like my job. Like, it's such a stress. But sometimes we just get comfortable and we don't make changes. Whereas if you really think about it and say, hey, my plan in a year is to, start doing this thing that I love instead of working, right? So I think just having that like awareness to evaluate your life, figure out where those sources of stress are, eliminate what you can, and what you can't do, offset with stress relieving activities.
Like what?
Whatever you like doing. It's so individual. So I think exercise generally for almost everyone is a good stress reliever. Like whenever I ask patients, like, what do you do for stress relief? Exercise almost always comes up there. So that's great. So that would be more of like a yang type of stress reliever, like more of a doing type thing. But I think also balancing that out with something that's more passive, relaxing. So something simple as taking a hot bath, right? Most people love doing that. Or if you have a hot tub, that's great. We really like saunas. Like any type of like heat therapy is very relaxing to the nervous system. Breathing exercises, breath work, you can do it on your own. You can do it guided. Various types of meditation. Like there's so many free apps now and resources where you can learn this stuff. Various courses that are affordable or free even. So plenty of things that you can do. I think also even just like the social connection piece, right? Hanging out with friends. That's a huge one for me, right? Like I'm just totally stopped thinking about everything else when I'm having a good time with my friends. So plenty of different things.
Yeah. And I think when I ask people what they like to do to relieve stress, a lot of people say watch their shows, watch TV, or, be on social media or be on their phone. And that's what they do on their downtime to just kind of unwind. And I think that's fair to an extent. But I challenge you to challenge yourself as to if this is really nourishing you. Right? Maybe it is giving you that passive thing to do. And I think a lot of us are uncomfortable with having a bath without our phone, right? And just kind of being in our thoughts. Stimulation really craves stimulation. So what can happen is that after a stressful day, we just reach for our phone because even though it's passive, it's still stimulating. So sometimes our nervous system can get so wound up that it's really hard and uncomfortable to step away from all that stimulation. Even sometimes when I take a vacation, like if we were to go to our friend's cottage, it would take me like 2 days to actually feel like after that I'm like, whew, I just felt it. Like I just shifted and it just all of a sudden that stimulation, that nervous system finally turned off. So it can take a while. It doesn't take 5 minutes, it doesn't take like just closing your computer at the end of the day and all of a sudden you're relaxed. So I'd say challenge yourself to try and avoid technology, try and avoid putting more into the brain. When we're feeling stressed, it's because often our nervous systems are overwhelmed and we have so much input throughout the day. Right? We're speaking, we're in meetings, we're contributing, but we're also listening, we're also taking things in, we're learning new things. It's a lot of input. So even when I go for my walk and I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to my audiobook, sometimes I'll start and I'm like, what am I doing? I just need to listen to the birds. I need no input right now. Even though, audiobook is good. I'm learning, or a podcast, I'm learning, but it's still overstimulating my nervous system when I'm craving that deep rest. And I'll allow myself to take out my headphones and just walk. Just be with my thoughts, be with the birds, be with nature. And it can be very relaxing that way. So low stress lifestyle, very complicated. And sometimes we just need some support with that. And that's okay. You ask your social, network and see what do other people do that actually is nourishing to them. If you need ideas, maybe we can post online too and get ideas and gather some ideas for some low stress things that actually feel really good to the nervous system and are very nourishing instead of just kind of passive and somewhat depleting like social media or watching TV.
Yeah, I think it's helpful too. Like ideally you want to be intuitive enough that you can know like, hey, like you said, like I just need to take out the headphones and just like be present. But it's so hard. Like we just get caught up and next thing you know, you've been checking your emails for however long, right? Or scrolling and you waste all that time. So I think it's helpful for people to actually schedule that in as well and say like, okay, once a week or whatever, I know a lot of people choose Sundays. They're like, hey, I'm just going to like totally veg out and do the stuff that's relaxing to me. Or, this night is date night where we're just going to, do this. So putting that in your schedule as well and actually allowing that time and just being, sticking to it like you would stick to a work schedule type of thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Andrew and I just got back from being away and we felt like, so relaxed while we were away. And I felt like this new sense of peace that when we came back, I just knew that it was just going to stay because this is my new way of being and I feel so peaceful and I love it. I love this feeling. So it's just going to, this is the new Marissa. Literally day one back to work, fall into every single old bad habit, even scrolling on the phone in the morning, it's overstimulating first thing in the morning. I'm so guilty of that, going into work, checking my emails, probably just doing like that busy work all throughout the day. I fell into old habits literally day one of being back. And it was so eye-opening because of the contrast, because I was just in that state of being in that like low stress, peaceful state. And then all of a sudden I'm back and I'm feeling like my nervous system's just wired. And so I honestly appreciate that contrast so much because I was able to be like, whoa, how easy was it for me to step back into these old habits? What needs to change here? So I've been doing a lot of self-reflection the last couple of weeks to really be able to see, what kind of changes I can make so I can make this life that we have here more sustainable. All right. So those are just 5 things, okay? Nutrition, nature connection, movement, social connection, and the low stress lifestyle. These are 5 things that can help you to live till you're 100.
Yeah.
And they're simple. Like you might have heard them before. And sometimes when we hear things before, we can discount it really easily because it is almost like too simple. But it's powerful. These are foundational. We believe to living a long, healthy lifestyle. Long, healthy life. Like Andrew said before, lifespan versus health span. We're really looking at that health span, enjoying every single day on this journey.
Yeah, and there's plenty of other things. We didn't even talk about like breathing, or we kind of touched on meditation, but there's like so many other things we could talk about, but these are some of the core ones.
Yeah, sleep. There's so many. But that's actually why we created Centenarian Club. So let's talk about Centenarian Club and what that is.
Yeah, so we created a community of like-minded people to get together once a week. We host a video call and we just discuss various topics. So we do a deep dive on all these things. We have guest speakers who are covering other topics that we're not experts in. And it's basically all things, natural health that with a focus on longevity and getting us to live this long, healthy life that we've been talking about. And since obviously we can't cover this stuff, like not even a fraction in the podcast, we have time to really go deep on a lot of these subjects. People can ask questions, right? We can actually interact. It's not just like a lecture, right? We can all share different ideas and just learn from each other. But it's a really cool community, and we've had excellent feedback so far. But I think another huge part of the community piece, even if you can't get it together in person, doing this virtually has created like this new community that's really fulfilling for all of us.
Yeah, everyone's cheering each other on and involved in each other's goals and goal setting and also achieving the goals and supporting each other with resources. It's been really beautiful to watch it play out. Right now we have about I think 30 members, and it's been incredible. I mean, the things that we get to speak on and teach on every single week, and like you said, we bring in guest speakers as well, but most of the time Andrew and I are speaking on these types of topics, and more. There's so much more, and then we get to answer questions, or objections. I've heard this before and it seems really good, but whenever I try it, this happens and it doesn't work for me, right? So then we get to really tailor the recommendations based on who's in the community, and work with them and in a group so that everyone can learn from these types of questions. It's been incredible. I think that the type of person it's for is for the type of person who is looking for that health span, looking for health in every capacity. This isn't one-on-one naturopathic medicine. If you have a specific health concern, we're not going to be able to address that in a group setting. That is for one-on-one naturopathic medicine. But this community style is for recommendations that we believe to be so foundational to longevity, and we bring that in as different topics and areas of conversation to be able to really, really teach on, but also to allow you to integrate into your life and let it transform your life. And the feedback we've had on this is incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can go to NaturoAcademy.com and read more about that and sign up there if you're interested. And that's also where we have our blue blocking glasses and just plenty of other health information.
Yeah.
That's the spot to find us.
Right now, it's $60 a month to be able to join Centenarian Club. You get 4 classes, which are 1 hour every week, presenting on various topics or having discussions on various topics. Like we said, you can ask any questions. This is for literally anybody who's looking to enhance their longevity. You can be really any age. We find this best probably around your 30s and up. We have a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I think that's it.
Yeah,
but,
I think
yeah,
even if you're younger, it would still apply to you. We just don't have many people in their 20s.
I guess just when you're younger, you're so resilient. You don't realize, your focus isn't on longevity yet. But if you're younger and your focus is on longevity, absolutely, this is the place for you. So, so NaturoAcademy.com. Right now it's $60 a month, and we'd love to have you in the club, or you can even reach out to us for more information, or if you want to watch any of the replays to see what it's all about, you can absolutely reach out to us, and then we can send you a couple of replays so you can check out what the club's about, and then you can decide if you want to join from there. But we would love to have anybody who's really focused on longevity and really hoping to live that health span, live every single moment to its fullest, and be your healthiest version of yourself now and all the way till you're 100.
Awesome.
So we hope this podcast was informative for you. We hope that you join us on our mission to becoming centenarians and having a whole community of individuals also becoming centenarians together. And we will be back to the podcast world. I know we took a quick break there. Life got a little bit busy, but we are coming back to it. We absolutely love these podcasts. We love presenting information to you guys and for you guys. So as always, if you want any topics covered, please reach out to us. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the Natural Academy podcast.
Have a great day.
Bye.